Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us today in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 26, the Aila gītā. Please join us for Jai Radha Madhav prayers. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari, Yashodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari, Yashodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajjana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rāma 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 Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rāma 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 Hare Hare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Could you please check if it's the right account? Hare Kṛṣṇa. Please join us in Mangalacharan prayers, dear devotees, together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiriyet. Shavatam Swakata Kṛṣṇa Punya Shavana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Bhadrani Vidhunoti Suhasatam Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttabhishloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear devotees, please join us in the recitation of the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam 11th Canto, chapter 26, the Aila gītā. Verse 1. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Mallakshanam imam kayam.
Mallakshanamimam kayam
Labdva madharma sthitaha.
Labdava mardharma sthita
Anandam paramatmanam.
Anandam Paramatmanam
Atmastham samupati mam.
Atmastham samupati mam.
Please.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Mallakshanamimam kayam
Mallakshanam imam kayam.
Labdava madharma sthita
Labdva madharma sthitaha.
Anandam Paramatmanam
Anandam paramatmanam.
Atmastham samupayati mam.
Atmastham samupati mam. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
Mat Lakshanam,
Mat Lakshanam,
in which I can be realized.
in which I can be realized.
Imam,
Imam,
this.
Kayam,
Human body.
human body.
Labdva,
Labdva,
having achieved. Mad dharme,
Mat Dharme,
in devotional service to me.
in devotional service to me.
Asthitaha,
Astita,
situated.
Anandam,
Who is pure ecstasy.
who is pure ecstasy.
Param Atmanam,
Parma Atmanam,
the Supreme Soul.
the Supreme Soul.
Atmastham,
Atmastham,
situated within the heart.
situated within the heart.
Samupati,
Samapati,
he achieves.
he achieves.
Mam,
Mam,
me.
me.
Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, having achieved this human form of life, which affords one the opportunity to realize me and being situated in my devotional service, one can achieve me, the reservoir of all pleasure. and the supreme soul of all existence residing within the heart of every living being. Purport. Because of bad association, even those who are spiritually liberated may fall down from self-realization. Within the material world, the association of women is especially dangerous, and therefore in this chapter, the Aila Gītā is spoken to prevent such a fall down. One can be saved from sex attraction by association with saintly persons who awaken one's real spiritual intelligence. Therefore, Lord Kṛṣṇa will speak to Uddhava the amazing song of Pururava, also known as the Aila Gītā. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Please join us for Guru Pranati to request blessings. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshitarine Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tadham Vande Shri Gurum Deenataranam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So again, we are reading another Gita within Gita. So in this chapter, the chapter's title is the Aila Gītā, and someone may ask, why is the chapter called the Aila Gītā? And yes, so today we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 26, the Aila Gītā. And here one of the main lesson, the title is the focus we are going to take is how to make right choices. And the right choices are to align ourselves as per the will of God, right? Just like His Holiness Japataka Maharaj, he says, I have my plan, you have your plan, and then Lord Kṛṣṇa has his plan, and we can all understand whose plan will finally be carried out, because he is the supreme controller, right? And he is independent, Swarat. So here in Aila Gītā, the first question that comes is, why is the title Aila Gītā? And who is this Aila person, right? So, and we are studying Aila Gītā in Uddhava Gita, just like we studied earlier Bhikshu Gita in Uddhava Gita. And Bhikshu means beggar, right? And that was the Brahman who had taken to the occupation of a mercantile man. He had become a trader, and he was doing agriculture, trading, and trying to acquire money. And even though he was very intelligent, but he did not have the mindset of a Vaishya, of a mercantile person. He experienced great anxiety and miserly living, throughout when he was engaged, and he lost all of the love of his family members. And then he became frustrated, and then being frustrated, he attained detachment. So that is one extreme. Because of frustration, he attains, when someone can attain detachment and take to devotional service. So he became a sannyasi, and he as a beggar was wandering on this planet Earth and being mistreated by others, yet he understood that this is because of my past karmas, the sinful activities, the impious activities I performed. And so when he sang that it is only my mind which is the cause of all these miseries, that was referred to as Bhikshu Gita, because it was a bhikshu, a beggar, in the form of sannyasi, was singing this song. So the song of a bhikshu is Bhikshu Gita, and song of Aila is Aila Gītā. Now who is Aila, and how is he named Aila? That is an important aspect. So Aila is none other than King Pururava, the Emperor Pururava. He was the crown jewel of among the kings on this planet Earth. And somebody may want to know if such a personality, such a great personality has been referred And Lord Krishna is talking about Pururava as Aila, and the song of Pururava is referred to as Aila gītā. When Lord Krishna is referring to him, he must be very important. So let's look at what is his, the cause of his birth and his descendants again. So we'll be looking at his predecessors actually. So we understand from Lord Brahma, from the mind of Lord Brahma came Marichi. And sage Marichi's son was sage Kashyapa. And sage Kashyapa had many wives, and Aditi was one of his wives. From the womb of Aditi, he got Vivaswan, who is the presiding deity of sun planet, Surya Dev, also referred to as Vivaswan. So he is also Adityas. And so there are 12 Adityas, right? And the eldest one of the 12 Adityas is Lord Vivaswan, the sun god. And sun god, Vivaswan, from his wife, he begot a son also known as Shad Dev. So again, these are the times of Shad, I believe, right? Which is going on, about for weeks they have been going on. So he is the one who is the worshipable deity. Now, Shad Dev is also known as Vaivasvata Manu. Son of Vivaswan is Vaivasvata. So there is also a derived name. Just like Aditi's sons are called Adityas, Vivaswan's sons are referred to as Vaivasvatas. And Vaivasvata Manu, also Shaddev, in the womb of his wife Shraddha, he actually got many sons, Ikshvaku and others, but before Ikshvaku, Vaivasvata Manu did not have a son for quite some time, so he requested the great powerful sage Vasishtha Muni to somehow help him beget a son. So Vasishtha Muni, he decided to perform a great sacrifice, and during this sacrifice, to get the benediction that the king would be able to have a son. Now, with this mood, the whole sacrifice, the fire sacrificial arena was prepared and everything was done. And in the absence of king and the Vasishtha sage and the sage, Vasishtha, the king's wife, Vaivasvata Manu's wife, Shraddha, she approached the priest who was making the oblation, who was about to make the oblation, and she said that she would like to have a daughter. So, understanding the queen's desire, the priest, decided to chant the mantra according to her desire. And when the sacrifice was performed, the priest, made the oblation, requesting a daughter to be born. And this is exactly what happened. So when a daughter is born, while Vaivasvata Manu was expecting a son, he was very disappointed. So he named the daughter Aila, but then he went to his spiritual master Vasishtha Muni and said, this is very unexpected, because you want something else, but you get something else which you didn't want. So you still didn't have what you wanted. Now you have a responsibility of something that you did want. So he said that this is very unexpected, because you all have perfect control on their mind. You guys are all experts in chanting. How could this happen? How could the result be opposite? So Vasishtha Muni at that time, meditating on what had happened, he understood the discrepancy. That the priest was requested by the queen, and so he chanted the mantra to request a daughter for the king. So he said, do not worry, with my prowess, with my devotional service, I will be able to get you a son. So now Vasishtha Muni, he prayed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And having prayed to him, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, Lord Vishnu, again, Lord Krishna at work is Lord Vishnu, when he's at home is Kṛṣṇa. So he granted the wish that Vasishtha Muni was seeking, and Aila, the daughter of Vaivasvata Manu, was transformed into a boy, and the boy was named Sudyumna. So again, this boy was, very handsome, and it just so happened that when, as a prince, he was with his associates, other kingly persons, kingsmen, he was in the forest on arcade. Arcade is like, trying to become expert as how to shoot arrows and all, by practicing it on the animals. So this is, Kshatriyas were allowed to do that, but this also has sinful reactions. So there is a whole concept behind it, why Kshatriyas were allowed to do some things, because they had to be expert in, use of the weapons in a life scenario. So here Sudyumna was chasing a deer, and now as he was chasing the deer, it was very much evident to the deer that he is going to get killed. So his wife She-deer signaled him, so this is from other Puranas I'm giving reference, that to go near the Devi Kshetra and near Sumeru Parvat. So there, near the boundary, near the Sumeru, there is a forest named Sukumar. So at the edge of that, the deer, went through and vanished behind the bushes, but the prince along with his kinsman was chasing on his horse. So as soon as they crossed the boundary, something strange happened. They all got converted into a women bodies. So they were surprised, how did this happen? Now this is very important aspect behind it. The secret is because when he returned home, again Vavasvata Manu was very disappointed. He saw that his son, he got a son after Vasishtha Muni worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And now again he has been converted into a woman, and not just him, all other associates he went with in the forest Sukumar, they all got converted into the body of a woman. So he again raised this question to Vasishtha Muni, and Vasishtha Muni revealed the cause. What had happened was that on Kailash Parvat, when Lord Shiva was with his wife, and they were, together, as husband and wife, at that time, the sages, they approached Lord Shiva, but realizing that it was not appropriate time, they were not in proper situation, proper position. So the sages immediately went away. But Devi, Parvati, she was embarrassed. So she felt very bad that, such an event would happen. So she asked her husband to do something, right? So at Mount Sumeru where they were. So Lord Shiva at that time said that this Devi Kshetra, if anyone would enter, they will immediately, their bodies would turn into a woman's body. So that way there will only be one male in that region. And that would be Lord Shiva. Hearing this, she was satisfied. Now when Vasishtha Muni reveals this to Vavasvata Manu, that this is the reason when your sons Sudyumna along with his associates, he entered Sukumar forest, and that is in the Devi Kshetra, their bodies converted from male to female. So again, so this is where the change of body happened. And now Vavasvata Manu was requesting Vasishtha Muni that please do find a solution. So Vasishtha Muni decided to worship Lord Shiva. So he pleased Lord Shiva and he said, please, convert him back into a male. Now Lord Shiva said that I have given this boon to my wife Parvati, right? Goddess Parvati. And I don't want this boon to be nullified because that would lose its, the importance. So I would grant him a boon that he would be male for 1 month, and then next month he would be female. And so alternately he will be male and female. So Sudyumna was in this body, of a male for 1 month, and then he would take the body of a female, and that would be Ila. Now it just so happened that when he was, as Ila, so Ila, she was with her friends, walking, and she approached an ashram. And in this ashram, she saw this nice, very handsome gentleman by the name Buddha. And she got attracted. Buddha also got attracted to him. Now you would say, who is this Buddha and where does he come from? Right? So who's Buddha? He's son of Soma. So it just so happened that, Lord Brahma's, as he was, creating this material universe in the secondary creation, he had many Prajapatis, and one of them was Atri and Anusuya. And Atri and Anusuya, they performed great austerities, great penances and austerities, and by meditation, they were able to satisfy Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, as well as Lord Brahma. So they prayed to Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. All of three of them appeared, and they asked, what is the boon that you want? And then, Sage Atri immediately falling like Dandavat, like a rod, paying obeisances to them, requested that he would like to have sons like them. So this is where in progeny, in a family life, sex is permitted. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that, I am also sex, not against the religious principles. So the purpose of everything is there. So in married life, the intimate relationship is to get progeny, to get Krishna conscious children. So again, there is a samskar, like Garbhodhan samskar that is performed, and with the right consciousness, when husband and wife, they're together, they get progeny, and this progeny should be Krishna conscious. So they make proper arrangements for that, so that the right soul, an elevated soul, gets attracted. So here, since they had said, like you three, so similarly, so they got three sons. We know about the two sons. We already talked about Lord Dattatreya. He was Avadut Brahman. In UDDHAVA Gita earlier, we talked about Lord Dattatreya. Actually, the Navyogendras, they talked about Lord Dattatreya and his 24 gurus that he took lessons from by observation, not by taking instruction, but by observing these 24 gurus. Now, second son, so Lord Dattatreya is partly expansion of Lord Vishnu, and then Durvasa Muni, that's the second son. He is an expansion of Lord Shiva himself. And then the third son was Soma, a very handsome, very attractive young man. So he was an expansion, partly expansion of Lord Brahma. And so Som, he became very powerful, very attractive, very aristocratic, and he, became the emperor of the universe. So he was able to win over the upper and lower planetary systems, and he was performing so many Ashwamedh Yajnas. And in one of the Ashwamedh Yajnas, where his spiritual master Brihaspati was, the priest, Som saw sage Brihaspati's wife Tara. So he, being attracted to her, he kidnapped her. And Sage Brihaspati said that this is not right. Means as a disciple, you're not supposed to do such an action. And he refused to return Tara back to Sage Brihaspati. So all the devas, all the Indra and all the demigods, they took the side of Sage Brihaspati, their spiritual master, and they decided to attack who? Soma. He's the presiding deity of moon planet. That's why he's also called Chandra or Chand at times. So that's why when we refer to the word Chand Tara, Tara refers to the wife of Brihaspati. And here, because he was fighting against Brihaspati, Shukracharya took his side and all the demons joined his forces. So there was a great battle that ensued. However, Lord Brahma was somehow able to, make Soma agree to return the wife of Brihaspati, and Tara was brought back. But when Brihaspati, he saw his wife, he understood that she is expecting a child. And at that time, he was asking, whose child is it? And because she was embarrassed in front of all the demigods, she couldn't reveal whose child this was. So Lord Brahma took her, in a safe place and asked her whose child it is. And she was able to reveal that this is Som's child, Som's son. And as soon as Som, the presiding deity of moon planet, he came to know that this is my son, he took charge of this son. And who is this son of Som? Is Buddha. So this is where Chandra Vamsha starts. From Vivaswan, Surya Vamsha starts. But here Chandra Vamsha starts, and Buddha is the person, he is the gentleman whom Ila meets, and Ila is daughter of Vivaswan, sun god. Now Sudyumna, who was also, every month it would change. Now don't ask me because I have not been able to research how he was pregnant by Buddha, when in the form of Ila. When Ila was expecting a son, what happened on alternate months? How was that continuing? Yet at the same time, the interesting aspect is this, that Buddha and Ila, they got married and they had a son by the name Pururava. Now the whole planet Earth was being ruled by Prince Sudyumna. So it is also at that time was called, the whole planet Earth was also called Ilavrat Varsha. Just like Bharat Maharaj, when later on he became the emperor, the whole planet was called Bharatvarsha. So Ilavatvrsha was also a name of planet Earth, when Ila was the emperor. Sudyumna was the emperor of this planet Earth. So as you can understand that here, name of a emperor is coming from the mother. Just like Adityas, they are known because of Aditi. Vaivasvata Manu is known because of his father Vivaswan. And here, Aila is known by his mother's name, Ila. So that's the reason Pururava, the song of Pururava, is also known as Aila Gītā. And now that we understand who Pururava is, and once it so happened when he was the emperor of the world, yet at the same time you can understand his lineage. Buddha is the presiding deity of Buddha planet, Mercury, right? So his parents and grandparents are actually presiding deities of various planets. So he would be able to participate in many heavenly events. And in one such event, what happens is he sees Urvashi. Urvashi is an Apsara in the heavenly planets, and she, knowing that Pururava is a great emperor, an earthly emperor, they decided to stay together. So she becomes his wife and she joins him, however, with a condition. So prenuptial agreements, if we were to see, they were there back in those days. So Urvashi, she makes this agreement that three things he has to make sure are taken care of. First is, she would only eat food cooked in clarified butter. So again, that's an Apsara's, she has a celestial body, so that is what she wants to have, that's suitable for their body. If we humans try to eat food cooked in clarified butter, before you know, our body will get deformed. So it is very important for us to take things in proper context, proper respect. Now, what was the second condition? Second condition was that she had two lambs who were just like her children. So she said that you have to protect these two lambs. And then what's the third condition? She said that I do not want to see you completely naked. So, again, not in light. I should not see you. So they would be together when they're intimate, they would be in dark so that she doesn't see him completely naked. Now, as she went with King Pururava, Indra, after some time, started missing, and he asked the demigods to get this Apsara, Urvashi. Now you may ask, where is Urvashi coming from? So she appeared from the body of Narayan Rishi. So everything is coming around, right? Uddhav is getting this message from Lord Kṛṣṇa to take this message to Narayan Rishi in Badrikasham. But while in past, long back in time, Dharma's wife Murti, she gave birth to these two sons so that Sahastra Kavach, the Dambodbhava demon, can be killed. And at that time, when they were performing great meditation, Indra became insecure. And so he sent Kamdev, Vayudev, and various Apsaras to lure away and break the meditation of Narayan Rishi at that time. Narayan Rishi, welcomed them in their ashram. They were not at all affected by Kamdev, the Cupid, as well as they said that we should give you some gifts. So from their bodies came out many celestial ladies. And they said that why don't you choose one of them and she would be the ornament of the heavenly planets. So at that time, the denizens of heaven, they selected Urvashi and they kept her in the front when they went back. So again, sometimes people say, how could there be a materialistic being born from the body of Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Because Narayan Rishi are none other than expansions of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So here, it has been given that there are two types of expansions from Lord Kṛṣṇa. One are called Swamsha, which are all Vishnu Tattvas, and then there are Vibhinnamshas, which are Jiva Tattvas. So Urvashi is a Jiva Tattva, and she is an Apsara, she is a celestial being, very beautiful. There is no one in the heavenly planets matching her beauty. And so when she and Pururava, they get married and she is living with him, King Indra, he is asking the denizens of heaven, demigods, to go and get her back. So they knew about this condition. So what they did was, one night, they stole the two lamps, and as they were taking those two lamps away, the lamps, they make sound crying out, to save them from these demigods who are taking them away. Urvashi, hearing those lamps, she treated just like her own sons, right? So she immediately chastised her husband, Pururava, that you say that you are going to protect, but you are an imbecile. So she uses very harsh words. So hearing this, King Pururava, he runs without wearing clothes. He just picks up his sword and chases after the demigods. And then he retrieves those two lamps and he's bringing those two lamps. And what happens is, as he's coming back, the demigods, put light on his body. So now Urvashi sees Pururava coming, carrying the two lamps in his hands, but he's naked. He forgot to wear his clothes because he was so much hurt. His heart was pierced by the harsh words of his wife, Urvashi. So at that time she said that, okay, you did not follow your condition, so this marriage is null and void, and she takes the lamps and she returns back to the heavenly planets. Indra is happy, but Pururava is lamenting. And Pururava is going crazy because he is constantly meditating on his wife, Urvashi, not realizing that it was for so many years he was with her, but his senses were never satisfied. And when Lord Krishna is describing this to Uddhav, he is saying insignificant being, right? He was being attracted by insignificant pleasures. So that is what it is, because sometimes when we think that I am this body, we are conditioned like that. And we think that, one of my services is to satisfy my senses. Sense gratification becomes one's goal, but senses can never be satisfied. That is like putting clarified butter in a fire and hoping that the fire will die out. That never happens. We know that, right? Rather, it blazes stronger. While when we look at the beautiful form of the deity, Shishi Radha Madan Mohan, Shishi Radha Shyam Sundar, Shishi Radha Govindji, we see beautiful form of Krishna, beautiful form of Radharani. All our senses, they are fully satisfied, they are fully at peace. Rather, we experience transcendental bliss, looking at their smiles, looking at the beautiful lotus feet, looking at the, toenails which are shining like jewels. They are amazing. So when devotees, we see this beautiful form of the deities, our senses are pacified because they are feeling this satisfaction, the true satisfaction. While in this case, Pururava, on the other hand, who is in condition, is deluded. And that we covered in the last chapter as well, the influence of the three modes of nature and beyond, where we basically understood this science of why one becomes conditioned. And this is what was happening to King Pururava. Dhayato vishyam pumsa sangas teshu pachayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho vichayate. Dhyayate vishyan pumsa. If one meditates on a sense object, vishyan, sense objects, then sangas teshu pachayate. So sangas is attachment. One develops attachment towards those sense objects. And we have so many examples given earlier in this and Srimad Bhagavatam. What happened when Ajamil, when he was a Brahman boy, sent to the forest to collect some wood for fire and for the fire sacrifices by his father, who was also a Brahman. He just had a glimpse of a prostitute who was being embraced by a Shudra, and both were intoxicated, the eyes were rolling. But he meditated on that prostitute and form, and so his senses became agitated, and he developed attachment. So just like that, Pururava, he was with Urvashi, who was the most beautiful celestial being, Apsara, and so he was constantly thinking of her. So he had developed great attachment towards his wife, Urvashi. So attachment develops. Sanga sanjayate kama, and from attachment develops lust. So what is lust? when we are putting ourselves in the center, when we are putting our senses in the center, we are serving our senses by engaging in sense gratification. So he was engaging in sense gratification with his wife, Urvashi. Sanga sanjayate kama, so lust develops. Kamat krodho vijayate. Now that his wife has left him, he is upset, he is, angry, and he is trying to find a solution, and he is bewildered. And krodhat bhavati sammoha. So what happens? From anger comes delusion. Sammoha, moha is delusion. So one becomes deluded when, because of anger, one loses his own composure. And sammoha smriti vibhramaha. And so one's smriti, his remembrance, is vibhramaha, is bewildered. So in a bewildered state, how does one behave? Where in bewildered state, being completely in delusion, one's intelligence is destroyed. Smriti bhramsad buddhinasho. Buddhinashat pranashati. And when one's intelligence is lost, then one falls down into this pool of birth and death, the cycle of birth and death in this material universe. So that is exactly what's happening to Pururava, Aila. So the king Pururava, now in this state, was lamenting for his wife, and he is understanding that he has this great attachment, he's lusty, and he is making every effort. He actually cries out, he runs after her as she was leaving, without wearing clothes now, even this state, when she was leaving him, taking away the 2 lambs and going back to the heavenly planets, he runs after her, naked, and he's saying, "Oh, harsh woman, oh, please stop." So he's calling her very harsh. So this is just like, you're holding onto a tree and saying, "Please leave me, please leave me." Because, Urvashi had made it very clear that if the conditions are not being met, then their marriage would be null and void. And she's just carrying it out, yet at the same time, he is attached. While she is showing him that even though you are a great emperor, but you are lower than the blade of grass on the street. She is humiliating him in this state. And she returns back. Now, Pururava, after a long time, he finally sees Urvashi, who was in the company of other, of her associates. And seeing her, he immediately approaches her because he still has this attachment. He's still lusty after his wife, Urvashi, that she has left him. Now, Urvashi gives him a very nice advice. So that is also being referred here in this chapter by Lord Kṛṣṇa. He says to Uddhava that Urvashi gave him very nice advice that never believe the words of a woman, right? And Chanakya Pandit, Srila Prabhupada refers so many times in his purpose that Chanakya Pandit, he gives this instruction in Niti Shastra that one should not trust the words of a woman, one should not trust a woman or a politician. So both are very dangerous situations. Basically, it is said that one should not trust, words of person who is able to manipulate them or who is able to attract our senses and can, mistreat us or misuse us. That is the important instruction that Chanakya Pandit is giving. So here, Lord Kṛṣṇa is revealing to Uddhava that even though Urvashi told him, even though Pururava recognized it, he still begged for her and taking, in a sympathetic state. Urvashi agreed that, at the end of every year, she will spend one night with him. So now, at the end of every year, she will spend one night with him, and in this way, she would give birth to a son. So she gave him 6 sons. The eldest one was Ayu. And Pururava, he was still not satisfied. He asked, Urvashi to stay back. And Urvashi at that time said, "Why don't you pray to the Gandharvas and they would be able to satisfy your desire?" So thinking that he wants, his desire needs to be satisfied, she was giving him a solution and hoping that he would be satisfied and stop, being in this great emperor he is, crown jewel of the earthly kings, he should not be feeling like this. So in a sympathetic mode, empathy is there some level, but at the same time, she just wants to get rid of him. So with that mindset, she is, giving him this suggestion. that, being compassionate, yet at the same time, giving him. So he worships. So this is where he worships great sacrifices. Fire sacrifices start at that time. So the Satyuga is, ending, and Treta Yuga is beginning. And Treta Yuga, by performing fire sacrifices, one can attain perfection. But Pururava is performing this fire sacrifice not to satisfy Lord Vishnu. He is performing this fire sacrifice for his sense gratification. So that is material consciousness. Spiritual consciousness is to perform all activities for the satisfaction of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Yet at the same time, he is engaging in his own sense gratification with this mindset when he is carrying out. That is where the fault lies. However, Gandharvas, they are pleased by him and they deliver him a woman who looks exactly like Urvashi, but this is not Urvashi. And while walking with her in the forest, Pururava realized that this lady is someone else, she is not Urvashi, so he leaves her in the forest and returns back to his palace. But later on he comes back, and at that time he, hoping to get Urvashi, he performs great sacrifices, and finally he is able to go in his very body to Gandharva planet, right? And the planet where Urvashi is there, and there he is again with her. Yet at the same time, like we heard in Bhikshu Gita, the Brahman became frustrated from his life and anxiety, he developed detachment. Pururava, he was enjoying with his wife Urvashi in a heavenly planet, and in due course of time he realized that his days and nights are passing just like that, and his life is passing away, and he is so much attached to her, and this attachment is not going down. His lusty desires are not dying. He is constantly seeking more and more sense gratification, and he realizes, he thinks that this satisfying the senses, the sense gratification process is very dangerous. And so he is able to, identify, just like King Yayati, he identifies that, okay, sense gratification is not the purpose of this life, rather the purpose is to engage in devotional service. Similarly, King Pururava is able to recognize that aspect, and he, understanding this, immediately, sings this song of Pururava. King Pururava is also known as Aila gītā. That the senses can never be satisfied. That is just like putting clarified butter in the fire. The fire never dies down. Rather, it blazes stronger. So what he had done was, he had actually disconnected the fuel from the fire, right? If there is no oxygen, no matter how much clarified butter you put in the fire, there is no oxygen to burn the clarified butter, to blaze it any further. So of course, then the fire would be cut off. So he developed detachment because of realizing what he is doing to his life, because of unlimited sense enjoyment he was getting. That develops detachment. And sometimes we see that this is what happens. If you have a fire going on and you put huge amount of clarified butter, that there is no possibility of it getting any air, soon you see that the fire dies out, right? Because you have put too much clarified butter on the fire, that there is no connection. Ghee, clarified butter is ghee. So just like that, Pururava has experienced that detachment, and that detachment, when it comes, he is awakened to his true consciousness. True consciousness as living entity, Jivera Sarupaya Kṛṣṇa Nityadas. And he's surprised to see that so much of his life has passed, and he had been seeking sense gratification, but this is never dying out. But by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, he is able to somehow develop detachment. And when he develops detachment, he sings this song. And he is identifying various amazing factors here. Now, in this matter, before we discuss what are the various aspects of this song that he is singing, Srila Prabhupada, I'm reminded of, teachings of Srila Prabhupada. In one of the examples Srila Prabhupada used to give was the way the goats are taken to the slaughterhouses, right? When they are on this way to the slaughterhouse, the butcher, he is very expert, he is very clever. What he does is, he puts very nice grass, and all these goats, they are busy in eating as they are moving forward. And as they move forward towards the chopping block, the grass has become nicer and nicer and nicer. So even though the goat that approaches the chopping block is getting chopped, the head is getting chopped off, the goats behind them, right, behind this main goat that is getting killed, being butchered by the butcher, is not, those other goats are not affected. Why? Because they are attracted by the grass. They're constantly seeing that there is this nice grass, and that is the allurement. So this is how Srila Prabhupada said, Maya is orchestrating the entire material existence. So we shouldn't be foolish goat like those goats and trying to be happy and enjoy in the comforts of this world. And another place he has said that this material world, any place in this material world is not suitable place for a gentleman or a lady. So we should understand that sense gratification is not the purpose of life. Rather, the purpose of life, what is the goal of life? Love of Godhead, right? So, Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. Prayojana is the goal of life. Sambandha is that we are eternal souls, part and parcel of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. Jivera Swarupaya Kṛṣṇa Nityadas. So, we are the eternal servants of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So, we should be serving Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And now, Abhideya is the process. What is the process? The devotional service. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhyam Atma Nivedanam. The ninth process of devotional service that Prahlad Maharaj reveals when his father asked him, what have you learned in the school on the second occasion? And also, Shukdev Goswami adds in the 11th canto, reading and writing also are part of the devotional service. So there's 11 processes. And then if you go to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, he talks about 64 ways we can engage in devotional service, the processes. So they keep extending, they're unlimited, yet at the same time, devotees, the mood should be in a vipralambha, means mood of separation, that Uddhav is already feeling. So it is very interesting that Uddhav is with Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, and knowing that Lord Kṛṣṇa is returning back home, but not taking him, he will be left on this planet Earth. He is already in this vipralambha, he is already feeling the separation. So you can imagine that separation, that if someone is leaving you and you will not be able to see that person. And Lord Kṛṣṇa was life and soul for Uddhav. So how much attentive he would be, how much curious he would be, how much important he would be feeling that every word, every instruction that Lord Kṛṣṇa is imparting, he is taking it to his heart. And he is making such wonderful inquiries in Uddhav Gita. So in 11th canto, chapter 6 to 29 is Uddhav Gita. And 30th and 31st is where Lord returns back home, back to Godhead. And of course, the first 5 chapters refer to the setting of the scene, as how Lord plans to go back home, back to Godhead. So here in Aila gītā, as we continue, we should understand that we should not be like those foolish goats, like Srila Prabhupada explains, in his instructions to us, saying that we should not be like that foolish goat, just being happy in this material world. And then he gives very nice example that in a family life, a man or a woman should not just feel that, we are happily living family life. Rather, we should understand the purpose of life and engage in devotional service and understanding everyone else to be, all other living entities to be, living entities are Jiva. So again, they are also very dear to Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And understanding that, yes, everyone is a Vaishnava. Some know it, some don't, right? Some are in forgetfulness. So we treat them accordingly with compassion. And then if people are envious, then we have to be careful and we don't want to deal with them. So again, we have to be very conscious time, place, and circumstances. Based on the time, place, and circumstances, we make, choices. And the right choices are very important for us to make for our own spiritual advancement and the spiritual advancement of all those who are around us. Yes. So here, now Pururava's story, when we hear about Pururava, and we hear this story, it is like so shocking that he was the emperor of the world. His wife was one of the denizens of heaven, an apsara, most beautiful living entity in this material universe, some can say. Yet at the same time, he is lamenting and he is taking to devotional service and he has developed detachment. Now, somebody can say, well, if the person is so beautiful, then what can we do? And we talked about this example Srila Prabhupada said, you're holding on to the tree and saying that, okay, please leave me. Maya, which is the material energy of the Lord, is jada. It's not conscious, it's unconscious in nature. We get conditioned when we get this body, which is made up of, the gross material and the subtle material. Earth, water, fire, air, ether are the gross materials, matter, and then subtle aspects are the three ones of them as false ego, intelligence, and mind. So we have the gross body and the subtle body. And sometimes we get bewildered. So Srila Prabhupada gives this very nice story from the Shastras. And interestingly, Pururava refers to that story. He hints to that story in his song. So once there was this son of a landlord, and he got attracted towards a young girl who was actually a worker in the field. And he, would make various kind of pleas to her, being attracted to her beauty. He would make plea to her to, allow him to enjoy her. And she basically said that this is not right. Why don't you come and see me after 2 weeks? And so he says, okay, after 2 weeks you will agree? She says, yes, why don't you come after 2 weeks and we'll see that at that time. And now thinking that he should not disturb because that's her request, he decides to not disturb her. What the girl does is, she takes various kind of medications so that, she was vomiting day and night, and she was, what do you say, diarrhea and so many other factors were being caused. So she was, when after 2 weeks, when he came to see her, what does he see? That outside her house there is a very, thin, literally in its skeleton, girl is sitting out there looking very strange. Her eyes are popping out from her body. Her, ribs are visible. Her hands are completely like bones. And he's very skinny, very, not so attractive, very ugly looking girl. And he's like, oh, I'm here to meet her. And then this girl says, oh, I'm that girl. He's like, no, you can't be. She says, why don't I show you the beauty? And she takes him inside the house and she shows him all the stuff that she had been, vomiting out. She was collecting in pots, and it was all bad smelling, yucky looking, and he immediately gets detached. And he understands, this boy, the son of the landlord, he understands. Like, even though he was a princely estate, he develops detachment. Understand, the girl says, see that this is what beauty is. It's full of mucus, pus, blood, bones, and all these abominable things. So that's what the body is made up of. So realizing this. So now Pururava in his song sings about that this body is made up of all these abominable things, and it has bad smell, and how is it that we get attached to this body? So he is actually referring that he was attached to the fragrance of his wife Urvashi from her body that was coming. Yet at the same time, he is realizing that this is, the body is made up of so many abominable things. And yet at the same time, this attraction was there. So this also helps us develop detachment. And now he is also asking a question, that who is the true proprietor of the body? Is it the parents who have given birth to the body? Sometimes people think that, oh, we have these children, so we own them, right? Well, you don't own them. Because Lord Kṛṣṇa says in Bhagavad Gita, Aham bij pradapita, I am the seed-giving father. So Lord Kṛṣṇa, as Karadakshai Vishnu, is, with his sight, he is impregnating this material energy. And the body that we have received is part of the material energy, so the body produces various living entities. And these living entities that the body produces are conscious because they have, Atma, the Jiva, soul in them. So again, because of that they are conscious. So we have to be very, very careful to understand things in proper perspective, that everything is an expansion of Lord Shri Krishna. His external energy is his expansion. We living entities are his expansions. And so the purpose of all his expansion is because he wants to enjoy the relationship. And so everything should be used to satisfy Lord Shri Krishna, and then we living entities can be happy. So that is an important aspect that we have to understand, that our happiness lies in serving Lord Shri Krishna and not in serving the various senses. Not to seek sense gratification, but rather to seek the satisfaction of Lord Shri Krishna, who is known as Rishikesha, the master of the senses. When we understand this, then we are properly established and we can engage in devotional service. And we should be calling out to the Lord, because it's not a privilege, rather it's a privilege, it's not a right. So we have to seek this privilege, and that's why we pray out, calling out to the Lordship, that please engage us in your service. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa Mahamantra, Srila Prabhupada explains, is a transcendental sound vibration coming from the spiritual world, and this is like the cry of a child for its mother. That's how we should be praying, calling out to the Lordship. And when we sing Hare Krishna, when we sing Mahamantra, when we call out to the Lordship to engage us in his service, to the eternal mother Radharani, to engage us in her service, in the service of Lord Shri Krishna, we have the opportunity, we get purified. And also it is part of the devotion, one of the devotion process, praying, right, and chanting. So those two processes are reflected here. So it's not just the mean, it's also the process and the end. So again, this is where we have to establish ourselves in engaging in serving Lord Shri Krishna. So every moment we have choices in this life. And now King Pururava is asking that who's the proprietor of the body? So we understand, but his interesting questions are very thought-provoking. He's asking, who's the true proprietor of this body? Is it the parents? No, they are not, actually. So that's why when he asks the question, we have to understand that we as parents are not the owner of the body of our children. Rather, we have to serve them. These are Vaishnavas born in our family, and we should help them in their spiritual journey while we're carrying out in our spiritual journey. And when we are together and engaging in devotional service, then it becomes sadhu sangha, right? So that is another important aspect, that we should constantly be seeking the association of devotees, and we should be giving association to the materialists, people who are innocent. That is also part of compassion, empathy. So that is also very important. Now, there are many interesting incidents. We talked about Ajami's case, we talked about Pururava's case, and you may ask, hey, is there a case where the person was so beautiful, the wife is so beautiful, yet at the same time the husband or the man on the opposite sex, not being attracted by the opposite sex, and is able to carry out devotional service? I'll give you two wonderful examples. They're very beautiful examples. First is Srila Haridas Thakur. Srila Haridas Thakur, when he was young and he was constantly meditating on Lord Krishna, and he was chanting the holy name, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. And we all know that he is also given the title of Namacharya by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So Mahaprabhu himself gave him, that he is Namacharya, because he was chanting how many rounds every day? 192 rounds. That's 64 times 3. So he was constantly chanting. And when he was chanting, he became very famous when he was a young man itself. So one of the landlord in Mayapur, he became jealous of Haridas Thakur. So he sent a prostitute to disturb Haridas Thakur. And this prostitute approached Haridas Thakur in the evening hours, And when she approached him, Haridas Thakur said, why don't you just sit, let me finish my rounds. And he continued chanting his rounds. And he continued chanting his rounds all the day. It is morning. And then say, oh, it is morning, so you may leave now. And so the prostitute left. And then she came the next night. And Haridas Thakur said, let me just finish my chanting of my rounds. So he continued chanting his rounds, and she is waiting patiently. Now this time she is wondering, whole night he chants. This is such a wonderful personality. And so she became curious and she was constantly hearing it. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. So instead of taking her association, Srila Haridas Thakur was giving her his association. So we don't have to take association of the materialist, rather we should give our association and engage in devotional service. So this is what we learn from Srila Haridas Thakur. So again, on the second night also, he chanted all night and then it was morning, so she left again. And third night she came. Now third night, seeing him constantly chanting, she became devotee. She shaved her head and she took the devotee dress and she, started chanting. So that is the effect of devotional service. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastakaya, Lava Mata Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Haya. So love Mata Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi, you can get all kind of benedictions. And that's why this way or that way we should take to devotional service. And Sutta Goswami at Naimisharanya in the first canto itself is singing, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. Akama sarva kamo va. Akama, even if you have no material desire. Sarva kamo va. And even if you have all kind of material desires. Moksha kama, even if you have a desire to attain liberation, to get out of this material world and attain, supreme, absolute truth. Moksha kama udaradhi. Tivrena bhakti yogena. Then with great enthusiasm you should engage in bhakti yoga, devotional service. Yajyate purusham param. And constantly worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purusham param. He is the topmost, enjoyer. Purush also means enjoyer, not just male. Sometimes we also always refer to Purush as the word male, thinking that males are the enjoyers. No, Purush means the one who is an enjoyer. So he is the topmost enjoyer. And because we are part and parcel of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, we have this tendency, qualitatively one, but quantitatively different. He is vast like ocean and we are like a drop in the ocean. That's quantitatively. But qualitatively, we also have this tendency to enjoy. Rather, by enjoying our senses, we should be serving him. And this is where Lord Kṛṣṇa tells us, he teaches us, when he was being served by the gopis in Vrindavan. How does he respond? He says that, I can never satisfy you, I can never repay the debt of your service. Rather, you have to be satisfied in your own devotional service. And Acharya has explained that one of the lessons that we learn from that example is that he's telling these gopis that by engaging in my devotional service, you will experience transcendental bliss. And that has been the theme of Uddhava Gita. That by engaging in modes of material nature, we will never be satisfied. We cannot even get the glimpse of the transcendental bliss. But by simply taking to devotional service, we can experience transcendental bliss. We can experience this eternal happiness. We can experience the lasting happiness. However, in the case of Pururava, there is an important lesson that comes in. That he was a well-established emperor of earth, right? And he was a very religious person. And he was performing devotional service, but after seeing Urvashi, he got distracted. So even in spiritual life, we have to be very careful of our association. And association is paramount. So we should be always seeking devotee association. And as Srila Rupa Goswami revealed in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, right? And Srila Prabhupada translated in Nectar, actually Updeshamrita, the nectar of instruction. This is where he has revealed those verses, and one of the verses is how can we enhance our devotional service. Utsahan nishchayat dhairya tat tat karma pravartanat sangatyaga satovritte sadvir bhakti prasiddhati. So how can one advance in spiritual life? The 6 symptoms are being described in this verse. Utsahan, with great enthusiasm we should engage in devotional service. Nishchayat, with great determination, we should not become faltered if something is not working in our way as we desire, right? There will always be impediments in our way. Yet at the same time, as devotees, we should continue to engage in devotional service this way or that way. However, we should continue to engage in pleasing Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa the way he desires. Anukulena Kṛṣṇa. Dhairyat, with patience. So patience is a virtue. So we have to be very patient in our service. We should be very attentive in our service. Patiently we should be carrying it out for His satisfaction. With love we should be carrying it out. So again, patience comes when you have tolerance. Tolerance comes when you have affection, when you have love, you have proper understanding of our relationship with the Supreme Lord. So that's where we should be very careful. Utsahan nishchayat dhairya tat karma pravartana. Tat karma pravartana are the 9 processes of devotional service. Sangha tyagat, and giving up the association of materialists. Materialist refers to people who identify themselves with this body, with the body, material body, and also they seek sense gratification. So even an association of people seeking sense gratification, thinking that Lord created this material universe for our enjoyment and now He has left and this material world is for us to enjoy. That is material consciousness. Rather, we should understand that this material world is an external energy of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And energy is meant to be used in the service of the energetics, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So we, who are living entities, are also His expansions, and we are meant to please Him. And the material energy is meant to please Him. Yet we have this Anand Bhaya Abhyasat, we are constantly seeking happiness. And this happiness can only be attained if we seek to satisfy Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And Srimad Bhagavatam is not different from Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, right? And so when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord says that we are worshipping Him by our intelligence. When we read Bhagavad Gita, when we read UDDHAVA Gita, when we read Aila gītā, because this Aila gītā, even though it was the song of King Pururava, was again sung here by Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So we should understand in proper perspective that our benefit is in taking to devotion service and calling out for the Lord to engage us, allow us to get devotion service. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Now, as Lord Kṛṣṇa is revealing the song of King Pururava to Uddhav, some amazing examples are being identified. Like, King Pururava is asking, whose body is it? Is it of the parents? Or is it of the wife who derives pleasure from this body? Or who gives pleasure to this body? Or is it the children, who are constantly dependent on this body? Who's the proprietor of this body? Or is it the, fire at the last, when the last rites are performed, the fire, at the time when it's burned, is it that fire who's the owner of the body? Or if the body is buried, is it the insects who's the owner of the body? Or if it is left in an alone place and the vultures and the jackals and dogs, they eat it away, are they the owner of the body? So all these things are very thought-provoking. We should think about it, that we have received this human body by the mercy of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So this material body is made up of material energy. So we have the gross and subtle elements, and these are all coming from material energy. So the supreme proprietor of everything is Bhoktaram Yagatapsam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. Suhidam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatma Maham Shanti Vrichati. We should understand that all the sacrifices that we perform, the beneficiary is Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. He is the supreme proprietor of all material and spiritual universes. And He is the best friend, He is the well-wisher, He is the benefactor of all living entities. And one who understands this, one who understands and acts accordingly, attains peace. So that is peace formula. And we also understand that by becoming attached to a sense object, how we talked about, one falls down. And this is where he is talking about that who is the true shelter, who is the true family, who is the true friend. King Pururava is singing that a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a true friend. He is like a perfect boat. So the devotees are like the perfect strong boat that comes at the right moment for the drowning materialist, people who are constantly being agitated by engagement of the sense gratification. And so they are able to save various living entities who are drowning in this material ocean. So in an ocean, if there is a boat and you are kind of like, in the waves, being hit by the waves from all directions, trying to somehow even breathe and survive, if a boat comes, that is such a big relief, right? And you can easily cross over the ocean, in a boat. So such are the devotees. And Lord Krishna says that these devotees are actually worshipable. So we should worship the devotees of Lord Shri Krishna. We should hear to their instructions, and just simply by hearing to the instructions, and the instructions of devotees are what gives satisfaction to our heart, to our senses, and breaks away, detaches us from this material attachment that we have developed because of constant meditation and constant greed and constant, lusty desires that continue to hit us like waves and tormenting us day and night, anxiety causing. And Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he is revealing Macchitta madgat prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So what do devotees do? What do they do? Macchitta madgat prana bodhayanta parasparam. So my devotees are constantly, their mind engaged in thinking of me, their life fully surrendered to me. They are constantly talking about me, and in this way, tushyanti cha ramanti cha. That's the way they are deriving tushti, right? They are feeling satisfaction. They are feeling great satisfaction, and they are feeling transcendental bliss. Ramanti is transcendental bliss. So he's saying that. But what is the state of a materialist? Materialist is like we normally say, mana chinta and man ganat prana shokayanti parasparam. Their mind is constantly in anxiety, mana chinta, and man ganan, right? Man ganan is all kind of frivolous things, all kind of gossip. Prana, their whole meditation is on the life is spending in all kind of frivolous activities, material activities, great endeavor, heavy endeavor. Shokayanti parasparam. So what is their destination? They're constantly lamenting, they're constantly in anxiety, and they're constantly aspiring for more and more. But the only thing they get in return is lamentation. This is the materialist, people who are conditioned soul in material consciousness, who are seeking sense gratification constantly, thinking that everything that we have received in this material world is for our enjoyment. So that is also very important for us to understand. Well, sadhu sangha is very important. So again, as we are continuing to tat karma pravartana, 9 process of devotional service. Sangha tyaga. So what kind of sangha tyaga we should do? The association of materialists. So we should not take their association, rather we should give them association as devotees by engaging them in devotional service. Sato vritte, following in the footsteps of acharyas, following in the footsteps of our spiritual master and the great devotees of Lord Krishna. So sadbhir bhakti prasiddhati. So one is spiritual life, the devotional services enhance the spiritual life advance, one advances very well in their journey to attain the love of Godhead, to attain Lord Shri Krishna. So that is the focus, that should be the focus, that we should always be that single focus, right? That we should keep. And what we should not do has also been revealed in Nectar of Instruction, as well as means again, that's the English translation of Updeshamrita by Srila Rupa Goswami. And that is Atyahara prayasya prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyamcha sadbhir bhakti vinashyati. Bhakti ka vinash. The destruction of our devotional service happens how? Atyahara, eating more than necessary. But Atyahara also has a reflection of acquiring more than necessary. Because when we acquire too much, we become lusty and attached, and we become anxious to preserve it. Atyahara, prayasas. And to acquire so much and to eat so much, we have to work very hard. Over endeavor. One should not do over endeavor. Prajalpo. One should not engage in gossip. Rather, one can be Muni but constantly talking about Lord Shri Krishna. So that is the mood of a Muni or Muni. So, Niyamagraha. Niyamagraha has 2 meanings, as Srila Rupa Goswami reveals. Niyam agraha and niyam agraha. Niyam agraha means to not perform, ritualistic ceremonies. So that is like, I don't want to perform it because I have nothing to do it. So that is also in ignorance. And niyam agraha is performing ritualistic activities because of being attached to those ritualistic activities or related fruits that one gets from those ritualistic activities without understanding the spirit behind those ritualistic activities, without understanding the essence of those ritualistic activities. So when we develop understand the true essence why we are performing a ritualistic activity, and we understand the spirit behind it, the main focus, the goal, the objective behind it, then it becomes spiritualistic activity, then it becomes spiritual. Hare Krishna. It's loading photos, I do not know. So here in this particular chapter, Pururava, he is continuing to sing and Kathayant Niyamagraha Jana Sanghascha Lalyamcha. So one should give up the association of materialistic men, people who are seeking sense gratification, Jana Sangha. And Lalyam, one should not be greedy to enjoy the senses, become lusty and running after sense gratification. Because these 6 signs are signs of destruction of one's devotional service. So even when we are engaging in devotional service, even when we are engaging in serving Lord Shri Krishna, even when we are seeking advancement in spiritual life, we should be very careful, because this material world is a very dangerous place. Right? Padam padam yat vipadam na tesham. There is danger at every step. So that should be the understanding. And here, this is where we would like to end. So again, one of the important aspects is, now Pururava is also discussing some important aspect that devotees are like the perfect boat. They are like the sun that drive away the darkness. Just like one, is not feeling dull, not feeling fearful, is not feeling, cold when one approaches the sacrificial fire, because fire has these 3 qualities. When you approach sacrificial fire, when you approach the fire, it has heat, that's one of its qualities. Then it has light, so it makes everything bright. And then the third aspect is it drives away fear. Fear sometimes, if you are alone in a jungle and you have fire, then you know that the animals would not approach you, so you can be saved by using fire in the right way to protect yourself. So similarly, by taking the association of a devotee and by engaging in devotional service, one can become fearful, one cannot be in ignorance, one can be fearless. One can be fearless. Yes, fear is driven away, not fearful. And one is enlightened, so the darkness of ignorance is driven away because of association of devotees. One gets spiritual knowledge, one hears about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He is the reservoir of all pleasures. So one experiences transcendental bliss. And so that is another aspect. One is not cold anymore. They feel warm at heart and they are rejuvenating, Ramayanti. They are constantly enjoying transcendental bliss in the, engagement in devotional service. And would not behave like Pururava, who was acting like a madman, running after his wife without, even properly wearing clothes. He was, being completely ignored. Such a magnanimous personality, such a, emperor. He was rejected by his wife and he was running after her. Such a lamentable situation he was in. So one should not be like that, be a toy in the hand of a woman or someone who can, mistreat you. So again, in the case of men, it is women, and in the case of women, it is men. So again, we have to be very, very careful not to be used by, because we may develop attachment. So again, if we want to develop attachment, we should develop attachment with lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. That's where our true attachment lies, not with other living entities. Right? Yet at the same time, we should respect all, not expecting any respect from others. Because every living entity is very dear to Lord Shri Krishna. Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. So he is the best friend of all living entities. So a friend of a friend is a friend. That is a very important aspect. So we should treat everyone with respect. And another personality, we talked about Srila Haridas Thakur, another personality that comes to mind is Kadama Muni. Now, Kadama Muni, when he was meditating, he wanted to ask for a boon, right? And what was the boon? He wanted a beautiful wife, a very well qualified wife. So he meditated on Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu appeared on his Garun, standing on the Garun. So it was this is the one place where we see that Lord Vishnu is standing on top of Garun, who is still flying in the sky. And Kadama Muni prays to him that please, offer me this benediction that I want a very qualified wife. And who approaches him? Swayambhuva Manu, the administrator of the universe, he approaches him that I would like to give my daughter in marriage to you because you are such a qualified. First he had approached Kadama Muni knowing that he is a great saint, he is a great sage. But then he saw that Kadama Muni is so, young and effulgent, and he's so, magnanimous looking personality. He was very impressed. So he offered, understanding that he is also, Kadama Muni is also looking for a wife, a very well qualified wife. And what does Kadama Muni reveals to Swayambhuva Manu? That he has understood that once when Devahuti, daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, once she was playing on the terrace of the palace. So it was must be a very high building. And on that palace, when she was playing with a ball, seeing her playing there, a Gandharva, Vishwavasu. So Vishwavasu was a great Gandharva. He was in his plane, he was flying in his plane, and he was attracted by her beauty, her flickering, her chanchal eyes, constantly looking here and there as she is playing, and the ankle bells, the sound of her ankle bells and her beauty, he got attracted by her and he fell from his plane. So beautiful she was. Yet at the same time, when Devahuti is married to Kadama Muni continued to perform his devotional service in a regulated manner. He did not deviate. And Devahuti, who was the daughter of the administrator of the universe, you can imagine, the emperor of the universe, Swayambhuva Manu, she coming from such great lineage, from such comfortable home, she stayed at the ashram of Kadama Muni, constantly serving him with love, with gratitude, with constant devotion towards her husband. So that's the duty of a wife. But husband has to be at the stage of Kadama Muni, constantly engage in devotional service for the wife to serve him. Because by serving a devotee husband, wife attains the same destination just by serving him. And this is where very interesting examples have been given in Shastras, where the wife approaches the same destination as the husband, just like Swayambhuva Manu. When he leaves for back home, back to Godhead, his wife, she also attains the same destination. We have seen so many other personalities attaining the same destination. The wife's attaining the husband's destination. So again, and when Kadama Muni was able to attain the perfection, at that time, he realizing that Devahuti, she had become so frail looking, she had become so weak looking, all the luster of her body has gone away because she had been constantly serving him. In his devotional service, she was, serving him. She did not take care of herself. She was so devoted to him. Seeing that, he became merciful towards her, and this is where the first, makeover scenario happens, where he is, with his mystic power that he had attained with his devotional service, he was able to make her regain her youth, her beautiful form as she was. And he gave her what a wife looks for, the pleasure that she was seeking. And yet at the same time, after 9 daughters and 1 son, and who's the son? Kapil Dev, right? So he is, Supreme Personality of Godhead himself appearing as Kapil Dev. He is there. And Kadama Muni, now that a grown-up son is there, he takes Vanaprastha, he goes to the forest, following the prescribed duties of, Varnashram Dharma. So again, even though he had his son, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead appearing as his son, he did not forget about his devotional service. And Devahuti, Mother Devahuti, she took instructions from her own son, Kapil Dev. And the Sankhya Yoga has been described in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we have discussed that. So here is another example where an amazing beauty has been married to a devotee, but the devotee, instead of taking association, gives association, purifying the consciousness, right? And so this is our attitude should be. And just like Pururava, he was able to detach the fuel from the fire. We should be able to detach by not meditating on the sense objects, but rather meditating on the lotus feet of Shishi Radha Madan Mohan, Shishi Radha Shyam Sundar, Shishi Radha Kṛṣṇa. And this way we can be delivered and relieved from the 6 enemies. Who are the 6 enemies? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mad, Matsara. Lust, anger, greed, pride, delusion, and envy, or sometimes called jealousy, envy. So these 6 enemies will be relieved from, and we'll be able to take the boat of the devotees and go back home, back to Godhead. With this attitude, we should constantly chant the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. So every moment we have this freedom to make choices. And we should make right choices by taking to devotional service, by calling out to the Lord in the mood of humility, with tolerance. Tranadapi shunichena, tarorapi sahishnuna, amani namanadena kirtaniya sadahari. So we can continue to chant the holy name of the Lord, considering ourselves lower than the grass on the street, being more tolerant than the tree, giving all respects to others but not expecting any respect from others. We can continue to make our life blissful and experience transcendental bliss in the devotional service. Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear devotees. This is where the chapter ends, and we learn as how Pururava was able to attain perfection. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrind ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Kṛṣṇa.